Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, System Engineer Skills for the Mix Engineer, presented by Hoff and Pooch Van Druten. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. Just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit questions to the presenters and they'll try to answer as many questions as possible. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control, and we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions Workshop series on pro.harman.com. We're adding new sessions daily, and right now we have over 20 sessions scheduled for August and September, so watch for those on the calendar. And now I'd like to introduce you to Chris Cookie Hoff and Ken Pooch Van Druten, the presenter for today's webinar. Cookie holds a Bachelor of Music degree from Moorhead State University and has mixed live acts for nearly 30 years. He has toured as a front of house, monitor, or systems engineer with acts such as Styx, Josh Groban, Shania Twain, Ricky Martin, Justin Bieber, Blue Man Group, and Lords of Acid. Pooch is an experienced producer and live sound engineer with a degree from Berklee College of Music, 3 Grammy nominations and credits on multiple platinum and gold certified records. Over the years, Pooch has worked with Jay-Z, Travis Scott, Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, and others. And I'm going to pass it over to Raul to give an additional introduction.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Laura. This is Raul Gonzalez from Harman Professional, one of the senior system engineers. Great to have you back on our Wednesday session for the live workshop series. Today, we have a very, very special event brought to you by 2 very good friends. Cookie Hoff, one of the most renowned system engineers in the business today, known each other for many years, now mixing front of house for Styx. We're going to have a great session to talk about how he does it on the trench war, where he's actually system engineering and mixing front of house all at once. And of course, a man that requires no introduction, Pooch Van Druten, the man, the legend. We're glad to have you on board today. Many of you will figure out in a minute why we have these 2 guys together. So I'm going to jump out of this PowerPoint for 1 second just to catch up with them. I encourage everybody to be on gallery view so that you can see our faces while we're chatting for a few minutes. And this is a session that Cookie, you came up with as you've been touring with Styx for the last couple of years, also system engineering and mixing. And you had collaborated with Pooch on a number of tours as a system engineer. So we thought it'd be great to give the audience both sides of the coin, you know, the engineer that is actually doing the system engineering work themselves, and also the engineer that is traveling with 1 or 2, like Pooch, system engineers on their tour. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So
the spoiled brat, right? Yeah, the spoiled brat.
I tell you, the lucky, the few, the proud. So first of all, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. Great to be here.
I'm doing well, considering, you know, I'm trying to do as much audio things as I can, do these kind of things, because, you know, we're not working, so I gotta, you know, do these things. But yeah, doing well.
Hopefully things in Texas are improving, and you're in Colorado, I think, right, Cookie?
Denver area, you bet.
Fantastic. And you're still keeping busy. I know you have been mixing a few things, you know, over the last few months, staying at home, keeping busy with some other projects. And Pooch, you've been all over. You know, it's obviously Pooch and Rabel series has, you know, taken off. Chapter 26 by now. We love watching that.
Awesome.
Also, the wrong end of the snake. So we're really honored to have you guys here today. You know, Cookie, this is a very close to my heart kind of scenario as a system engineer. And so I'm looking forward to, you know, your insights and kind of the experiences that you have gone through. And it's going to be interesting kind of bringing all that back to when Pooch was mixing on big, you know, Shoko Prism Rigs and talking about before system engineers roamed the earth. So I thought that, right, before we got started, let us put things on time perspective a little bit, if I can manage my PowerPoint skills. And by the end of the season, I'll figure out PowerPoint. So I thought that before we started talking about system engineering as we know it today, I thought it'd be good for the audience to get a quick, you know, reminder that, you know, Systune and smart rigs, you know, haven't been there since the beginning of time. You know, this is actually a very in audio time, a pretty recent development. So, once upon a time, the optimization of a system, was actually kind of the work of a very few group of people, and certainly was more geared towards permanent installations. So as you'll see, the development or the evolution of this, came by people like Alexander Yule Thornton II, called Thorny, Bob McCarthy, who all of you guys know, the late Don Pearson on all his work with the Grateful Dead, Ken DeLoria from Apogee Electronics, who developed a very cool system called CorrectEQ. Of course, well-known mixer and designer Patrick Balsell, who's been doing, political and music events forever. Jamie Anderson, of course, who was at the forefront of teaching with Bob McCarthy all of the SIM classes, and other engineers like Kyle Takemori. Of course, Sam Burka, who helped bring us smart, and engineers like Scott Harmala, who have tuned many, many awards like Grammys and Super Bowls. And so the development of the gear really goes back, probably to the 70s, 80s. Back in the beginning, if you were lucky, if you had a real nice real-time analyzer that probably had like screen capture, fast forward, Techron Crown developed a thing called the TEF, time energy frequency, which was based on a technique called time delay spectrometry. So basically you can actually put a source into the system and you can measure the reflections, but you had no phase response, you had, like the RTA, no transfer function. So people that actually wanted to start analyzing a system, with a transfer function, they started using a dual FFT spectrum analyzer, and that became the propeller for the Myers Sound, SIM rig, the source independent measurement system. Okay, similar to that, Apogee developed his CorrectEQ, which also used a dual FFT analyzer, mostly used with Apogee products. And then you fast forward, to the late 90s, now you have systems like Smart and Systeo more recently, where you have something where you can actually look at phase, you can look at transfer function, you can look at spectrum analysis, and so forth. And so part of the reason why this was not available or not very useful back in the touring days is because the gear was very expensive, very heavy, and only available to the few. It took a long time to set up. So compared to your smart rig that fills in your Pelican, this would actually be something that would get used for special events, if you will. So going to give you a couple of pictures for those of you who have never seen a dual FFT analyzer or a TEF analyzer, or even an RTA, which now we only see it in Smart. And Cookie, I know you're SIM certified from 2012, so you probably remember some of this gear.
I do. I actually even remember that TEF unit because when I started working at Audio Analyst in the mid-90s, Albert had just finished some of his designing of the Alto system. And I remember seeing in that computer sitting on a desk with the dust on it and a dot matrix printer next to it. I had to ask, what is that thing? And they said, oh, Albert uses that. It's a TEF. I'm like,
yeah, TEF 10, TEF 12, TEF 20. That was quite the evolution. It was a great tool to have all through the 90s. So obviously the question becomes, how the system, how did audio system engineers position come about? So Cookie, why don't you take us through this part of it? How did we get here?
It was a long road. So a lot of companies had their boxes that they made themselves, and it was all proprietary. And only later on did the technology really advance for specialized systems. So let me just read down the PowerPoint. Technology moves forward and helps grow the need for specialized sound systems, sound technicians, because it wasn't just company engineers anymore. It could be somebody who maybe didn't work for a company, but knew the manufacturer's speakers. So proprietary loudspeakers no longer on the option. Newer branded loudspeakers changed the industry, and these require specialized knowledge. With the branded loudspeaker systems came everybody's line array calculators, everybody's system control, things like that, things that were unique to that system and terminology that may have been unique to that system. What also helped push all this through was all the internal DSP. Previously, for some of you who don't know it, in the older days, we had to send tons of copper back to the stage. And it was literally PA left, low, mid, high. PA right, low, mid, high, assuming that you don't have any zones within that PA. If you had it zoned out, you were sending low, mid, high, top 3 boxes, low, mid, high, top, next 3 boxes. It was a lot of copper, a lot of drive lines. So once it came down to the DSP being present in the amps, and that was early to mid 2000s, and we were talking about this before, and I think it may have, what sparks my memory is the Crown iTech.
Yeah.
And everything was done inside. So integrated DSP versus our individual units for EQ, delay, crossover, and gain control. Now with that, the IT industry has been rolling for decades. So all we had to do was jump onto their backbone essentially, and leverage all of that technology that they are paying for their R&D and already have proven to work and be very robust. So with that, remote control of sound systems comes to life, and today we have several Wi-Fi options. For some of you, again, who may not realize it, the tablet was not always there.
No tablet.
No tablet. It's something
Tablet.
it's something that we take for granted now, really.
Yeah.
If you want to use a tablet, here, go, you connect it to Wi-Fi. You can walk in front of a zone and go, oh, it's a dB and a half too loud, or my delay time is slightly off. Before, it was one person sitting at front of house, another person walking to that area if you had time, because the communication back and forth was pretty primitive. Maybe a two-way radio, maybe hand signals. Maybe you agree on, okay, we're going to look at, or you're going to shout, hey, we're looking at level now, up, down, good.
Yeah.
Delay, how much time do you have? Is it close enough? And portable measurement systems became more accessible and affordable. Older dual FFT systems are large, heavy, expensive, and much slower. Once Smart came in, it was, SIM, really. And once Smart came in, it was really a game changer as well.
Yeah, I'd be curious to chat with Pooch a minute, and also when you were an audio analyst, I'm going to stop here for 1 second.
Sure.
Pooch, when I went out to work with you in 2001, when we did that KISS tour, Vertec, BSS 366, Macrotech 5000s. Before that era, when you were doing KISS, you had been doing Shoko Prism Rigs. What was the drive and the adjustment system for a Prism rig? What was there? What did you have a bunch of DSP? Probably not.
No, it was all analog crossover stuff, and with analog compression on each of the 5 bands. And it was a lot of point speakers at people and turn them up, and we used to call it spray and pray. Yeah. Because we would literally hang speakers, point them where we thought they would go, and then, really kind of go for it. There was a time period when that kind of crossed over into what all the things that Cookie just pointed out, where some of us that had that experience of, years and years of working with those kind of tools, right, where I saw a guy show up with a laptop and I was like, what is that nerd doing over there? Like, what? I don't need any of that crap. I had to be convinced that it would make it be better. Right. And so, I think that when line arrays showed up, there was a big technology jump. Along with that came all of this other stuff that we're talking about. Yeah. And it was a big, for an engineer like me, it was a big acceptance period, right? Okay, so now we're using these tiny ass boxes that are hung up there, and now we're using this laptop, and what is happening,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a situation where, I think you toured with VDOS right before Vertec, and even then, those systems, you probably had an XT826 with some analog amplifiers. So if you were lucky, like Cookie, like you were commenting, I know that Albert was an audio analyst, was a partner of this, which is you might have separate processors for different parts of the array. Back with the Alto, system, or even when they moved into Vertec. I know that we did that for your tour in Australia, where you might have a couple of, BSS processors for the main, you might have another processor for the outside hangs, maybe one for the delays. So at best you might have maybe 3 processors, but there was certainly no control or DSP in the amplifier. So that all of the tools we have nowadays of individual circuit control, some people, especially people who were using Meyer systems, you could see that you have a separate parametric, you have a separate delay unit, you had a separate, actual processor or crossover unit just for that branch or for that part of the array. So, the amount of gear that you would be, putting in a rack was substantial compared to just now that everything is in the amplifiers. I mean, when you started audio analyst, Cookie, what was the Alto, the system, or were they using S4s?
S4s were still in the shop. They were starting to get phased out. Alto had just started, let's see, the Winona tour, 96. I came in August 96. The Winona tour was out at that point, and that was one of the early tours with the Alto system.
And that was all probably Crown amplifiers, which also I think Shoko was using all kinds of Crown amplifiers on their Prism rig.
Macrotex.
And you had Macrotex as well. And some people by that time had used iQuick to do level control of some of the amplifiers. There were some PIP cards on the Macrotex, but there was no real networkable DSP. It was mostly maybe to monitor the amp to make sure that it's, the level is there. But, that was pretty much it. Everything we see today didn't come about until the iTech really came about. And that, once digital amps kind of came to the picture, that kind of changed. Like you said, pushing the envelope with the TCP/IP protocols and networking capabilities. So you can imagine back then, if you had 2 or 3 BSS 366s or XT8 or whatnot, you might have a laptop that is attached to that rig, and that's it. It doesn't go anywhere. So you definitely depend.
Serial connection.
Yeah, serial connection on no modem. I can't even remember that anymore. And like you said, a lot of communication. I remember, Pooch, when we were there, it's like a lot of like, I'm going to walk up there to the 5th level and then I'll call you on the radio. And, I hope it's all good because I don't want to walk back up here. So,
yeah, I mean, the ability to have zoning like that was completely foreign to me. I was like, what? Okay, cool.
Why would you need that? Oh, wait. Okay. Now you hear it.
I know with Shoko Prism, they did it with the type of box that was in the array, right? So for instance, on the top, if you really had to hit a stadium, the top box, you could put these things on the top, like purples or whites is what they were. And they're just super long through horns. So that was how they were getting away with it back then. But we didn't, other than that, there was no zoning,
that was probably, that system was probably in its time one of the most advanced, electroacoustics designs, by James Brawley, in that all of the, the cabinets had a specific function, even though everything from the outside looked the same. And it actually was based on line array theory. So it actually kind of ahead of its time. So that's a great thing. I was going to ask you, what did you feel like at that point in time, that you had all the tools that you needed to get the system how you want it? I mean, ultimately, what is the goal of today's goal of the system engineer, right? We're trying to get the performance of the audio to be very even and very similar from the front of the audience to the back of the audience. It's kind of like the simplistic goal of what we're trying to accomplish. But back then, did you, in both of your cases, you with the Alto and you with the Prism Rig, did you feel that you go, oh, okay, it sounds really good here, but maybe not so good over there, or maybe the coverage cannot be optimized because I don't have control over that part of the PA? Did you notice that back then?
For me, absolutely. So, part of the reason I always tell this story, part of the reason I got into this business was because when I was 15 years old, I went to a Van Halen concert, and all I could afford were tickets way up in the nosebleed seats of the Cow Palace in San Francisco. And it sounded horrible and it was awful. And I was mad. And by no fault of the mixer at that time, it was the technology that existed. Sure. But I was mad that I mowed lawns all summer long and, took all of my money to go to the show and I couldn't hear the vocals, So it has driven me in my career since then to try to get to a point where every seat in the house gets the same show.
Right.
And I really didn't feel like that started to happen until really recently, honestly. Probably 5 to 7 years ago is when I started going, okay, I think maybe almost every seat in the house is the same.
Yeah, so that probably ties to that, when you were thinking, what is this Propellerhead doing here with all of these computers? And you kind of
Totally.
go, it's about giving everybody, making it democratic, right? Getting everybody to have a similar audio experience as opposed to hating that you spend all that money. And I'm sure that you yourself, Cookie, what was the instruction from Albert, when he would send you out with, the alto rig? It's like, okay, you fly the PA, you turn it on. It's making noise. Okay, we're good.
A lot of it was from Derek Alfringa. He was the lead system engineer. Yeah, I remember Dickie.
Yeah.
And there would be things that you would, today we're going to checkerboard because the alto system was 2 boxes. It was a two-way box and a bass bin, not a sub, a bass bin. So it was important, crossover at 250. So we would do things, we would checkerboard, or we would go in rows and things like that. Every day he was trying to figure out, taking input from the front of house engineers. At this time, I was just the fly kid and stage batch. But just trying to pick his brain and all that stuff. And it got as good as it was going to get. You still had to deal with the loads of harmonic distortion in the drivers back then, beaminess, and hey, it's not very loud over here. Well, okay, what do we have? Well, we have this little point and shoot box. Okay, well let's plug that in over there. Well, what delay time? It's whatever. Turn it up if it's interfering. Turn it down.
Right.
It was very, very coarse, and even in those days, the Crown IQ, it was mute. It was level.
Mm-hmm. And probably a lot of engineers just trying to correct whatever with the graphic at front of house. You remember the TEQ transversal EQs that came with the Prism rig, and you had a couple of graphics. I mean, if you saw people with if you saw people with parametrics, you were like, ooh, fancy, or what is that? It would be like, what is that? What is that knob? And so you would see those more often than not on special award shows. If you had somebody like, Patrick Balsell or Ken Deloria tweaking the system, or Scott Harmon, you would have some nice parametrics, to do adjustments. But for most, rock and roll or touring shows, it was just graphics, graphics, delays, crossovers, and some limiters, and off we go. And they were all separate units. So
phase with phase is what it was back then. It was no win.
That's a great term. Yeah, it was really fight phase with phase.
Yeah. Great. So let's jump back into the PowerPoint. And
Hey, Raul.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just pop in real quick? We had a number of people asking if the chat could be enabled. I just wanted to let you all know that the chat is now enabled, so you can feel free to use that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That's the. You see, guys, you have a big crowd. I'm sure they'll want to say hello.
Chat away.
Chat away. All right, guys. So take it away, Cookie.
Okay, as audio systems engineer, so I'll speak to just that discipline.
Yeah.
Responsibilities. So that is the guy who is getting up early in the morning, is shooting the geometry of the room with laser, disto, entering all that information. Keep in mind, I'm speaking modern days. Enter all that information into the line array calculator and try to figure out how to deploy the system in a way that is best for the show and best for the venue, considering what you have in the truck. That's always the thing. So you're calculating your line array. You would hand out, because the way the system engineer position has evolved. In the older days, the SE would also be flying a PA. There's so much going on, and the timetable, especially on a day in, day out show. Calculate the angles between the PA, what the geometry of the PA is going to be. Hand it to your fly guys. At that point, you can essentially go grab something to eat in the morning because you've been there for several hours and you jump straight into work while they're waiting for points. Once the fly guys have it all up, you verify that it's all correct. You are verifying components. Today, you can have a sweep, and the amplifiers will actually tell you if there's an impedance problem, which is awesome. Other than that, you would have to literally just listen to every zone, make sure everything's plugged in. And once it was your turn, because you have to also consider in a production, it's a leapfrog. You can't just barrel through your thing, because you can't be making noise if there's people in the rig, in the lighting rig, focusing. So once the PA is up and to trim, then you get your window to tune, and you got to hustle. So now you are basically trying to align all these individual speakers into one giant home stereo, essentially. So the skills that you're going to use, and this, I'm going to interject something here, because talking and meeting to Pooch years ago, one of the things he said is people skills. And I thought, well, what is it audio enough? And he said, and talking to him, that's what it is. Because I found you have to talk to riggers, you know. Hey, I need this point move 2 inches. Why? Well, because at 245 feet out, it's gonna, you know, you're gonna be missing some seats. They don't know that, but you have to be able to talk to them. So a lot of people skills, no matter what you're doing in audio, you need to watch your details. There's a lot of details in the system engineering that you need to watch. You need to ask production managers, what's the seating map for today? You need to make sure, all these things that are coming to line. What are the skills? I'm just kind of winging it here. You just got to be on top of your game. You got to be confident in your thing so that when you are 5 shows in a row and you have very little sleep, you don't miss anything. That's the other part. You need to develop this and have an attitude where you have to go work until you get it. You can't just say, that's good enough. You know, if you really want to be successful.
You know, Cookie, one of the interesting things is that, you know, Pooch and I have been talking about this over the last few months now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting that the skill set for a system engineer now, it used to be that if you could fly the PA and you can get everything working and audio was passing through and everything was in phase, okay, you qualify. Now
there's networking, there's computers.
Yeah, networking. You got to have a solid background in computers. You got to have, you know, probably some Dante. You definitely need to be up to speed on all the basics of, you know, system measurement tools, whether it's Smart or Systune or whatever you're going to use. I mean, I don't think you have to be a Jedi Sim certified, though it would be great. But the list of different types of skills that you have to bring to the game, you know, has really increased. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a challenge for people, and you know, it's something that you have to, just like, you know, I'm sure you'll talk about this in the next session, which is that just like Pooch continuously works on his mix, you know, as a system engineer, you have to continually work on your craft. You have to stay on top of new technologies, new techniques, you know, whether it's software or whether it's microphones for measurement or whatnot. So yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to me, it's two completely different skill sets, right? Like the times where I have to be both, I think both suffer, honestly. And you know, I know a lot of you guys out there don't get the opportunity to have a system engineer, but the best shows to me are when you have someone that is really good at that skill set. You know, dealing with rigging, dealing with the you know, computer part of this, the networking part of this, and knowing what sounds good. That is the real Jedi of a system engineer, is a system engineer that does all of those things, plus knows how to get a good result out of speakers. Those are few and far between. And to me, that is a whole skill set that requires a bunch of time that I, as a mixer, just don't have the mindset to deal with, because I'm focused over here on all kinds of other things. So, you know, what you talked about, Raul, was there was a time period when literally system engineers were really just crew chiefs. And all they did was push the boxes, they hung the boxes, and then they threw the keys to the mixer and went, you know, good luck, we're all counting on you. And now I think it's way more important to have an excellent system engineer with that kind of skill set.
You end up having to know kind of what's going on behind, as an SE, kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So you have 1 foot in the technical side and you have 1 foot in the artistic side. Like Pooch said, you can't just look at the trace and go, okay, we're good. You do have to be able to critically listen and say, that sounds musical. Because there's a lot of things that could be technically good on the screen, but are not musical, especially as you move through different genres. And the musicality changes from genres as well. So it's definitely left brain and right brain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my... you know, getting further down into the slide, you know, my responsibility as a mixer has changed over the years as well. You know, my responsibilities, I used to mix a lot more to what the PA was doing. So, you know, when I first started, you were literally like high-fiving when you could hear the vocal, right? We were like, oh shit, we could hear the vocal all 90 minutes. It was amazing. And now we're at a point where speaker technology is really just two huge near fields up there. And so what's happening now as a mixer for me makes a lot more sense. When I first started, I've really felt out of touch. I was like, what do you mean we can't hear all the stuff, you know? So now my responsibility as a mixer is to give the system engine, literally, I mean, Cookie and I have had this conversation, and Raul as well. Both of you guys have been my system engineer, where I have said to you, here's my left and right. I think it's pretty good. Good luck.
Don't screw it up.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously a system engineer can't do his job without the mixer doing his job, and vice versa. It's a symbiotic relationship that when, like I said earlier, when a system engineer that knows the technology, but also knows what's needed to make it sound good everywhere, that's the guy that I want. And those are surprisingly few. So if you are a system engineer and you're getting really nerdy about learning all the equipment, that's cool. But you also, I think, need to do some ear training, you know, and learn what's, for lack of a better term, what sounds good and what doesn't.
You're not always going to have smart when you're walking around. That's the thing. You may walk into the zone and go, wow, that really hurts my ears. Yeah, it's too much 2K5. And you need to be able to go, okay, 2K5, I got to bring it down. When you walk back up the front of the house.
Last week we were talking about the importance of developing critical listening skills.
Yeah.
Not just
Absolutely.
hearing and not just looking at your trace, but understanding, okay, how do you focus your mind into a particular section of the spectrum and correlate what I see with what I hear, or if I'm actually hearing something, why is my microphone not measuring that or whatnot? There's got to be a correlation there, you know?
You know, sometimes I wonder, I have a theory that some mixers honestly grew up in a time period where they don't know what sounds good. They grew up in a time period with MP3s and super compressed audio. And maybe don't have an idea of what dynamics sound like. So when I watch a younger mixer at a festival where they are not succeeding, where everything sounds really just super, you know, squashed and narrow, I go, you know what? It's not really his fault. He doesn't know what sounds good. So I tell people, and especially systems guys, learn what sounds good. Go listen to records prior to 1995 or whatever, when you know, the L2 completely destroyed the record industry.
you know, Pooch, I'm kind of curious, is because you started your career as a recording engineer. You know, I think you know, we won't tell anybody about Dwight Yoakam Records anymore, but right, your next tour will be a country tour. But I'm kind of curious if now that technology has come, you know, this full circle to line arrays, and you can get a lot of really good coherence out of the PA, you know, depending on the room. If it's kind of brought you back to some of the feelings that you had when you were in the studio, you know, working on these records, where, you know, you went through a time period with, you know, trapezoidal type, you know, arrays and big PAs that had a lot of not a lot of coherence, and it was loud, it was punchy, powerful, but not a lot of coherence. And now, you know, you got now to line array systems that give you a lot of coherence, a lot of good imaging. And so if it's like a full circle for you, so you're back to working on your mix, you know.
Totally is. You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about, what I'm really talking about is dynamics. What I don't hear in a lot of great mixes these days is dynamics. Part of the reason that I love being a live sound guy is that I get to work with dynamics, and I purposely build them into my mixes. So for instance, a verse, I tuck a lot of things in a verse so that the impact of a chorus can be huge. Those are thought processes that are at the top of my head as a mixer. And I think that skill set has been lost, and that's kind of specifically what I'm telling people need to kind of get back is dynamics. And now that we have a speaker technology that can do that and is super responsive to that, we can have dynamics again, and we don't have to be record guys.
And I think some of the younger guys need to know it's okay to have that. That's the other thing.
Absolutely.
It's okay to have dynamics. Yeah. They always think, well, I need to make it sound like a record and squash the hell out of it, and it's okay to have dynamics.
Good deal. So let's see. I think we got these two topics. I was wondering, Cookie, because obviously you are doing both functions. Your conversation between system engineer and mixing front of house is a very short path. You're
very
talking to yourself, and so I would like you to kind of briefly talk about the fact that having these skills as a system engineer gets you to have a more consistent mix, which is something that I think Pooch was referring to, in the sense that back in the days, you might be basically tweaking your mix to the PA of the day. Well, now your mix, Pooch, is kind of locked in. You worked on that mix during production rehearsal, and now you work with your system engineers to actually get the PA to sound right so that your mix translates, every night. And in your case, Cookie, you're having to go and wrestle that PA pretty much every day, because you're also having a mix on your console that is pre-dialed, and you don't want to be changing that. So I'm kind of curious how do you wrestle that, because that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but you have a routine, which I'll get to in a little bit.
Good.
But it comes down to the point where you are confident in what you are sending out of the desk. You are familiar with what you're sending out of the desk. Like I'm sure Pooch will go on a little bit after this, is spending time with your mix with headphones, with near fields, getting to know it, placing things where it needs to be. So you are used to hearing it, and that's not the problem. So if you hear anything that pops out, so I'm in a situation where I'm carrying my front of house rig, but stacks and racks, for the most part, for most of my shows, are locally picked up. So there's different characteristics in every box, and in addition to every room being different. But when I hear something, if I hear a sibilance in the vocal, if I know it's not supposed to be there, it's not in my mix. It's in the PA. So let's back up a second here before that. Because it's me always tuning the PA, me always using my routine, me always using my target curve, I'm getting as consistent as possible, getting the PA as consistent as possible as I can for my needs. Right. So if something pops out, I can think, okay, well that was a problem area earlier in the day, at 1 o'clock when I was tuning the PA. So it's in the PA. Or rarely, well, actually, I shouldn't say rarely. Sometimes if I notice something over several shows, okay, then it's in my mix. Then it's just not translating to me from my headphones to my near fields. That's not coming across, but it's coming through big rock PAs essentially. So there's something that's in the moment, and there's something that's consistent over days, and that's when you have to go back to your mix and change those things, as Pooch will attest to. But having a routine and a tonal balance that I'm always shooting for gets me to a point where I'm not scrambling first 3 songs. It's just a couple things, and I might have markers in there. As we talk a little bit more about this, with data coming from your analyzer mics, it may be bad data, but it was showing on the screen. So is it needed or not? I mean, there are a lot of times when Pooch and I would listen to a system. I've spent time with it. Maybe I had to drop a whole bunch of filters in on it. And we would just go through and do we need that one? Kick it out, kick it in. Is it worth it? It's not worth it. Leave it out. How about this one? That makes a difference. Leave that one in. Trying to do as little to the PA as possible, EQ-wise, and really go after it with level between zones, time alignment between zones. Because the PAs these days are really good on just fire them up. They're really good because the manufacturers spend so much time on their presets. So that really saves a lot of time during the day. But having a consistent routine and thought process is really what speeds up your day and helps your consistency.
And we're going to go to that routine. I was curious, Pooch, we were talking about skills, and one of the things that Cookie talked about was interpersonal communication skills. And so I'm going to flip it around. When you are working with your 2 engineers, what is the communication process? When you started working with them on this most recent leg of the Iron Maiden tour, how do you go about communicating what your expectations are? It's like, because obviously your responsibility, you got to deliver the mix, you got to deliver the show. but you also have to kind of go to have a conversation with them as to, okay, what do you expect? How do they know what your expectations are?
I think a lot of it these days, because speaker technology is so good, I have communication with a system engineer and sit him in front of my near fields, like during rehearsals. Hopefully they're there during rehearsals, and say, okay, so pay attention. This is how I want it to sound here, but I want it to sound this everywhere. And I think that is truly the job of a system engineer. I just wanted to point out to everybody that both Cookie and I, Cookie doing gigs on his own, and I do an occasional gig on my own where I'm a system engineer and a mix guy. Once we get through, let's say, the first couple of weeks of the tour, the mix part of this is built and pretty much left alone, so that every day is either a discussion with my system engineer or a discussion with myself, if I'm that guy, about what I'm going to change about the speaker system. So the bottom line is, from a mixing standpoint, the end goal here is to rein in whatever speaker system is going on. Those are the things that I need. So the communication from a mixer to a system engineer in that is absolutely, imperative. I have to be able to say to my system engineer, hey, you hear that 200 today? I don't know what's going on. Is it this room? Let's look at that. I don't know what's happening. Even when I have a really good system engineer, I let him do his job, but I am still there kind of watching what's happening behind the wings. And we will have interaction and discussion about, looking at a smart curve, and both of us, and I'm going, man, look at that right there. I don't know what's happening. And then I'll leave him to work on it. But we have those kind of interactions. It's really, like I said, a really symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because conversing with other system engineers, we've had this analogy where kind of as a system engineer, part of our jobs is to actually sort of put a canvas on the frame, and you're going to paint this, great piece of art, this beautiful painting. And so, but I have to get in your head early on and figure out, well, how do you like that canvas? You want it really stretchy? You want it kind of bouncy? You want to help me put it on? Are you going to show up at 3 p.m. with the band and go, is my canvas ready? That sort of a situation. And every engineer has a different expectation of how that canvas should be mounted on the frame, whether it's, with you or with Natal or with Cubby or with Skin. Every one of you guys have a different expectation, because that's what you mix to, that's what your reference. So for me, it's important to, I'm sure for you, Cookie, when you were system engineering for Pooch and for many other engineers, the earlier that you can have that communication and that understanding, the better you can get your result. Because ultimately, you're not tuning the PA for yourself. I'm tuning it for the engineer.
I'm curious, Cookie, do you remember like when we first started working with each other and what that interaction was like?
You were very trusting of me. You gave me the rope and you said, do your thing. But if there's something that, if I was going down a pathway where it wasn't working for you, you'd say, hey, let's talk about this. So there was a little bit of, this was 2008. So there was a little bit of listening to your mix, which is invaluable. Thank God that band actually knew that it was important for the SE to be in rehearsals. So I heard it from start to finish, so like early parts in the song, you changing things. I'm sitting next to you in the rehearsal room. I hear your mix. Then the other part of that is going live and now translating that mix to the PA. I'm still trying to think of what it was in the near fields, but now it's in a big PA, so it's got a little bit of different vibe to it, and kind of just kind of figure out where home position is. And we would always have that discussion. You'd say, hey, bottom end of the snare, okay, 200 hertz area, things like that. And I would get to know your mix as well. So when we would do things like Summer Sonic, I mean, that's one that pops out in my mind. No sound check. We had to start going. I thought, whoa, that bottom end of that snare is not right. The bitiness of the vocals not right. So I knew, without having to even talk to you, I knew your mix signature. I could go to those things right there. And that comes back to the ear training and knowing what's musical and having a memory as well.
Yeah, that was very
Sonic
important,
memory.
having a knowledge of the mix of the engineer. And, it's like I always told, Kobe, I said, having your back, I'm here next to you, and my job is to have your back while you're mixing. And if I hear, if I'm going to hear something that, that doesn't sit right with the mix, and we have talked about it, I'm just going to go and kind of correct that so that he knows and let you know. Same thing with like acoustics in the room. If I know that the room is going to behave in a way that is going to, affect where you're mixing, I gotta let you know, whether it's the sub arrangement or glass in the back with the slap back. These are all things that communication it's gonna be very important. Cookie,
in a round room with you, Pooch, and the power alley for the subs was just killing us.
Right.
And there's no way around it because it's not it wasn't Champaign. I don't think it was Champaign, Illinois, but that's a round room like that. So the only option I had was, hey, I can delay one side and shift that power alley off the side, and you're like, do it.
Get this off of me.
Get it off of me.
Right. Yeah. But it goes to the conversation as opposed to just, hey, I've done my job. I'm going to sit over here. If you have a problem, let me know. You've been taking a proactive approach, saying, hey, by the way, there's a big power alley here, 15 feet over there. There's nothing. So what, you want to shift it, or what can we do about it? So communication.
We've often gotten comments. Like I remember doing an iHeart, and the audio guys, maybe it was Bauman. He said something about our relationship, because with one look, you and I could look at each other and go, oh no, hold on a second. Yeah, that's right. Not even having to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's imperative to have a relationship like that with your system engineer to be able to, it's weird. It's like I'm looking for in a system engineer to know when to speak to me and to say, as we're doing something, like look at me and go, are you cool with that or whatever? But then there's a thing where some system engineers are a little over the top with that. And I'm just like, you can't talk to me right now. I'm working,
know when to talk. Yeah. When to jump in.
Yeah. It's like back in the Kiss tour where you would look from under the Midas XL4. It's basically asking me, are the limiters good? It's like, yeah, it's like, we're good. Cause there's no way we could talk at that level anyway.
Yeah, but that's a band that wasn't about good quality audio. That was just loud enough.
That was so much fun. Anyway, Cookie, you ready to jump into your routine?
I am. I happened to catch a comment here from Elliot, who said drastic, delaying the whole side to shift the power. It was just the subs. It was just
the subs.
Yeah, just the subs to move it apart, which gives you a little bit of smear. But all you're doing is just moving the summing just a little bit.
Yeah.
We used to do that early on. I don't do that so much anymore unless it's really screwed up. But we used to do that pretty regularly because I was, if you remember, Cookie, I'm a real stickler about sub information and it being not having fingers and not having power alley. I want it to be the same everywhere on the floor. And that is, to me, the real dark arts of a system engineer is getting the sub right.
Serious dark magic going on right there.
It is. Yeah.
So anyway.
So why would I need to know how to tune a PA if I'm a band engineer? Why don't I always have a vendor system engineer? No. you won't.
We know which, Cookie, you could also talk about the fact that often you walk into a festival, back to the communication thing, now you have to be the system engineer, you're going to adjust that PA. Maybe it's a one-off for you guys, but maybe you're the headliner with 4 bands in front of you. So your communication report with the local system tech that spent 3 days tuning that system before you got there at that festival, how do you approach that before you get into your routine?
You can really do a lot with the system engineer if you're the mix engineer, if you know what you're looking for ahead of time, and not even without having to play audio examples. So as we were talking about in prep for all this, if you have a target curve, or you can describe to them on a screen, because you have to understand the system engineer is working between visual feedback from an analyzer and also sonic feedback from the PA. If you can describe to them in as close to tangible terms as you can on the screen what you're looking for, they should be able to say, okay, well, here's actually what the PA is doing. So, to get to where you need to go, maybe the subs have to come up 3 more dB. Maybe we have to, shelf the PA down or level it out. And that's all done before you even put noise to the PA, before you even start making it difficult for other departments to do their job. Because remember, this is a leapfrog. When you're making noise, it's hard to communicate on stage. It's loud at front of house. The LD maybe has a hard time talking in the radio back to their techs. You really have to minimize disrupting other departments. But you also have to have your time to do it. But one of the things that you can get done ahead of time is speaking in terms like this. So when I walk into a festival, we did Sweden Rock Festival last year, and we were in the middle of the day, and no sound check. It was unmute and go. I asked the system engineer, "Hey, do you have a sim or smart or sys-tune trace of your PA?" And he says, "Yeah, it's right over here." And it was, what was it? That was a K1 rig. And it was pretty flat from 250 out to as far as it was going to go. It didn't have a slope on it. So right there told me that, okay, I need to prep a couple shelf filters because I am going for that bottom curve on this screen right here. And that bottom curve is something I did in Smart, just using EQ. I'm trying to make a less visually noisy trace that the one above it was. The one above was actually a real PA from 2010 that Pooch and I had from Norwest. It was a Y18 rig. And that became the target curve that we started to use for the LP runs, from that. I can't remember if that was March or April, or maybe it was later in the year. I'd have to look at the metadata. Mm-hmm. But that became where I was trying to hit things for him consistently after that. And the target curve kind of evolved through the years. And when you start to say, all right, I like that, especially outdoors when there's nothing else interfering with it. I like, if the engineer says, all right, that felt really good. I like the way the PA sounded. Take note of that. Look where your response was for the day. Go from there. Because then the next day you could try to replicate that, especially if you're carrying your PA. That's the other thing. If you're not carrying your PA, it's a little bit of a moving target because they all feel a little different. Your throws feel a little different. Maybe there's a slight phase issue. Maybe it swallows, the bottom end of the snare or something like that. But your job as the SE is to try to make it as consistent as possible, because the engineers are already trying to do their job of making it as consistent as possible. So that bottom curve derived from the top one. So with all that, let me try to share this screen.
But I want to point out here that's interesting, Cookie. Don't mean to interrupt you, but
no problem.
So that target curve, which you're going to get into, kind of what the reason that we have target curves is really to discuss with someone else about what we're shooting for. But what I find interesting about that is because technology has gotten better, especially in high-end drivers. So like, for instance, the V25 box, the JBL box with the D2 driver, my target curve now, 10 years later, is way more linear. Like my high end doesn't really have a slope in it anymore because speaker technology has gotten so much better in that range of the PA. There was back then with the Y18, great sounding box, but it had some harmonic distortion that was a little bit wanky up there.
And it's funny because they're both JBL drivers. That was a 2451 on the Y18, and so the technology has come along, where you now have a lot less harmonic distortion. And so, by the way, that was not in the script. So thanks for that note.
But the harmonic distortion is confusing to the ear because it hurts. At high SPLs it hurts. So your natural tendency is to say, "Oh, I need to turn those frequencies down."
Right.
So it doesn't hurt
I just
anymore.
thought it was an interesting to point out that a curve from 10 years ago has changed because the technology has gotten better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you feel that your mix now is the same, different band, but would be the same as it was back then?
Pretty much. I think the reason that you're seeing this slope from back then is really I make my mixes for not only for what everyone hears through the speaker system, but also these days, everyone wants a left and right mix that you're handing to the artist. So you really have to be mixing kind of, thinking of being a recording engineer mixer or a broadcast mixer. You're tailoring your mix to be something that sounds good through a really good pair of near fields, or even a laptop, or even, iPod ear shit, So what that means is my mixes tended to have, a little bit more high end in them, a little bit more sparkly bits. But I think showing this curve was because of that harmonic distortion. We were kind of working on trying to eliminate that in the speaker system. Whereas now we can bring it up in the speaker system, but my mix is kind of remain the same.
So, and that reminds me of something that we had talked about before. The reason why I end up using a curve that actually slopes down, and this is really similar to an old school VDOS rig. This is a process signal division system controller at the front of house. This was XTA, I think, back then. It translates really well to an old school VDOS rig. In my situation with Styx, I bounce between old PAs and new stuff. So
Right.
it's really easy. It's not really easy. It's much easier to get the new PAs would have a nice flat response to slope down as it is the other way, to have an old PA slope up. So I have to think about it in that terms of, for my consistency with very wildly different PAs and technology.
So do you
what can I
tailor
replicate?
your mix to be more for the older school kind of PAs, and then when you get in a great sounding thing, maybe you add? Are you an additive guy to get that upper end part of this, or does your mix stay the same as well?
It stays the same, but I treat it maybe a little different on the two bus. So I also have a recording bus, and what I would do with that is listen to what I'm sending out of the console, and maybe if I need to add the HF to it, I would do that. But I would listen to it and kind of like master it, essentially.
Got
it. At home, come back to it and go, okay, I need to apply these changes to that. But it changes day to day. There's a couple plugins like Shep's Parallel Particles with the byte and all those things on there. I found that and the subharmonic. I found going through some of these smaller PAs that, maybe an 8-inch PA or maybe a 10-inch PA, that maybe they're nice. They're too pretty. So I need to add some edge to them. But with that, I would be just really cranking that recording mix. So that record gets taken off of pre two bus insert. So that's just, it just goes over there, and I can treat it later. But that also has its own signal chain before it gets printed.
Nice.
It's, you got to look at where you're playing, what you're dealing with, and go from there, really.
Do you find yourself, I'm just curious because I'm, I work for a band, Iron Maiden, that does probably 50% of our gigs are festivals. So really 50% of what I see are totally different PAs. So I think that's different than building a mix for a specific box that you're going to use for a year and a half on a tour. You know what I mean? Are you the guy that makes many changes in your mix going from manufacturer to manufacturer, or is that all speaker control?
It's all speaker control. And
okay, cool. And me too. I'm just curious.
Yeah, and if you have a certain tools on your two bus, it's really quick. There's a lot of things where I need some vibe, I need some energy, I need some rawness. A VDOS rig puts puts teeth on the snare drum right away, which is great. But after 5 minutes, it's too much. Your ears are tired. So in those PAs that are just a little too nice, I can add that, which is, as we've spoken before, is a great time to be in this industry where we can say, it's not distorted enough. I need to add distortion.
Right.
Think about that. Think about the old days. It was like, okay, thank God the show's done 75 minutes. My ears are toast.
So coming full circle back around to what we were talking about with the target curve, that is really what you're shooting for on a daily basis. Whenever you show up to a brand new, different kind of PA, you look at that, you look in Smart, and this is kind of where you start, right?
Exactly. But with that comes a couple of caveats. I run a consistent SPL because I found when I start to creep up over my SPL, that mix starts to hurt. All right, so I'm dealing with a little bit of
changes your target curve for sure.
Your target curve for sure. Yep, and because I'm adding stuff on the mix, it is a little brighter perhaps. So when you start to get up in the SPL, it starts to hurt, and that's the thing. Turn it up, it hurts. Fix it. Turn it up, it hurts. Fix it. Turn it up. Okay, we're good. It's loud and it doesn't hurt. I mean, that's really the name of the game if we want to boil it down to. But I also feel that hitting this target curve is a starting point, because what I found as being an SE where you've got the keyboard and the mouse and you're looking at Smart and you're doing the system control and all that stuff, it's a whole different thing to put your hand on the fader and push it and go, where is that? It's supposed to be right here and it's not there. And different PAs will react differently in different frequency ranges. Maybe something's front-loaded, maybe something's horn-loaded. They feel different. So this is part. Go ahead.
That's interesting that you say that, because that is exactly when I say I don't change anything in my mix. That's actually not true. What I am changing in my mix day to day from different manufacturer to different manufacturer is balance. I almost never touch EQ, but throwing a guitar solo, throwing a vocal changes balance wise. And if you listen to a board mix of, something on a JBL PA versus a K1 rig, the balance of that mix will sound a little bit different.
So I remember doing a gig with you where you had to mix upstage left, way upstage left, and I ran out to front of house. This is festival. Was this Rock and Ring? I think maybe something like that. I had Lake out there, and I had a radio, and you said, "All right, give me the first two songs to get settled in, and after the first two songs, call me." And my first comment was, "Your vocal throws are more than what you usually do," because you were listening in headphones and doing your throws. And that,
yeah. So for people out there that don't know, we used to do this a lot. It's funny how everybody talks these days. Of these engineers that are like, "Oh, we're mixing backstage," and I started mixing Travis Scott, a couple of years ago, and was mixing from a dressing room, and a bunch of people were like, "What? How is he doing that?" And I'm like, "Well, I was doing that in 2001 with Kid Rock." You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it is something that is difficult, but if I have a true compadre like yourself, Cookie, that I trust completely, I can do that. I can mix from anywhere as long as I trust the guy that can go out there and do what you just said.
And that comes down to the SE knowing your mix, spending nearly as much time with it as you have. That's right. Passively, but because you would do things on headphones. But when you have it on your near fields, I hear your shows. I hear where your relationships are. So the technical side of the SE is important. The musical side is just as important.
Absolutely.
Very well put. Hey, Cookie, I just wanted to make sure that people who are listening, and we have a great crowd, just simplistic realization that this is your target curve for the current band that you're mixing.
Correct.
If you were mixing a different band, you might have a different target curve. This is not a target curve for everybody with everybody's band. So you have to find your own target curve.
Find your own and come up with your routine, which I'll get to in a second. And this tends to be the curve. If I'm going to SE for a classic rock tour, this is usually the one I'll start off on, especially if they use words like, "Oh, I really like the VDOS system," or something like that. if they say, "Oh, I really like VTX," or "I really like K1," okay. As an SE, I got to know that 250 out to the top is going to be a lot more flat. But to get to this curve from a newer PA is really just a couple shelves. You knock off the little hills, get it to be a consistent trend, and then just take the whole trend and go down.
Yeah, because your curve is very linear, and so you and I were talking about that. With somebody presents you with a fairly flat response, you can just apply one nice slope on top of it, and now you have your tilt, which is your curve. So it's again, linearity works really well here. Curious to walk us through your routine and show people how do you get it done.
Okay, let me share the screen.
Also, one thing too, Cookie, I think you let the cat out of the bag there. The real Jedi system engineer is the guy that knows all the different manufacturers' PAs, right?
Yeah.
I want the guy that's been in front of all of the top 10.
So on all that time on Lincoln Park that we did, you and I did together, and we were bouncing from PA to PA. In that situation, we were advancing PAs. We're saying, "Hey, can you guys provide this PA? That this is the one that we want." And when you're a headliner, you can kind of have that kind of clout. But we also knew that at this festival, it was going to be a PA that wasn't our favorite. It was maybe top 5, maybe top 6, if you want to say it that way. But in our mind, we knew what we had to do. You knew what to expect, to how it was going to feel to you, and I knew what I had to do control wise. What the manufacturer's terminology, L Acoustics has, zoom and zoom factor and all that stuff. Other manufacturers use different terms, so they just have a preset filter. But but knowing all those things, if you're going to be a touring engineer, you need to know. And this reminds me of Julien and David, Waveform, right? These are two French audio engineers a few years ago that they formed a company where they had their drive rack. They were skilled in a lot of systems, and they were hired to tune PAs and be the SEs for festivals in Europe. So those guys really took it as freelance system engineer. Think about that. Yeah. Not working for a company, but because of that, you have to know a lot of platforms. If you're an SE for a company, you learn that company's loudspeaker systems. And that was really interesting to talk to those guys because they had the musicality, they had the technical chops, all that stuff. I think Julian is now working for D2. I looked him up the other day.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I think, so let's review. You want to be a badass system engineer, you got to have people skills. You got to be good at the technical side of this. You got to be musical as hell and be able to figure out what the mix engineer is looking for from the system. And 4, you got to be able to deliver that to the entire arena. And if you are that guy, if you have all of those things or girl, then man, you'll be.
And you gotta get it all done before 5 p.m. sound check. So.
5 p.m. Work for band. Justin Bieber, you got 15 minutes, man. You better pull it off in 15 minutes.
That was a rough one.
Lucky you guys. I'll pass on that one.
All right. Let's share the screen right here. So I had to think about this because it's been 5 months since I've done a show. So I thought I better write this down and really go through. So this is going to be pretty wordy on the screen, but I had to think about every little thing that I did because this may spark some questions. So typical checklist, and this is a situation where I'm not carrying a PA. I have stacks and racks, but what goes into that is advance the PA system. I get the contact information for the audio vendor from the production manager. By the way, I want to say Styx is one truck. That's it. We have our control in there. We have a lighting console in there. We have backline. We have set. We even have merch in there. So it is down and dirty. Try to be as efficient as possible with that. For 80 to 90 shows a year, most of those, probably 70 on a normal year, is stacks and racks and advanced lighting rig, old school par rigs, which are a lot of fun. So advance the PA, and this is something that I alluded to with when talking about Pooch in our relationship in Lincoln Park. Advance the hell out of it. Know what's going to be there, so that when you meet the audio tech at the venue, you can just discuss the system controller. Is it a Callisto up front? Is it Galileo? Is it a Compass? Is it Performance Manager? Is it R1? Is it LA Network Manager? All those things. Ask about the zoning, and this is all things that should have been done in the advance. But sometimes, if in my situation, maybe I'm playing a casino and I get really vague information. Yeah, it's a Meyer Leo system.
That's weird. Okay. Styx playing in a casino? That's strange.
It's a paying gig.
It's coming, Pooch. It's coming. Don't worry.
Awesome.
So discuss zoning. I mean, is it circuits of 2? Is it circuits of 3? I mean, for a lot of years, I didn't think I had to really spell this stuff out, but apparently I do. There's companies that will do 2, which is awesome. 1, even better. But 3, some of the smaller boxes will start to go 4 in a zone, and right there you're back to old time hockey with your zoning. It's very coarse. You need to ask what preset. So this comes out to knowing the systems as well, and thankfully I had the experience with the other manufacturers to know what they offer it for presets, and it changes, so you got to keep up with it. And I found that 60 hertz presets is what works for me. 80 hertz for my taste, and this is also developed from listening to Pooch's mixes. 80 hertz crossover doesn't seem to work for me. So as well, I should say. So if he says it's an 80 hertz preset, hey, can you change it to 60? Oh, I don't know how to do that. Do you mind if I do it? Let's you and I both look at the system controller. So knowing that stuff, and trying to get the big things out of the way right away. Where's the access to the system controller? Well, it's backstage up in an air-conditioned room, and I've got this tablet on Wi-Fi. Can you wire it? Things like that, because once the audience gets in there, you're going to lose all that. But I would like to have control of it, so I don't have to say to that house guy, try to describe to him what I want. Sometimes you get house guys that are on top of it. hey, can you grab filter 3 that I just put in there, pull it out, no problem, and they do it. Or can you go look at circuit 7? There's that high frequency compensation shelf in there. Look, no problem, they can get it. A lot of times, these guys are in there for 2 years and then they go on. So they know how to turn the system on. They know how to not blow it up essentially, but they may not know the real details because it was designed and installed by somebody else. Yeah, and that comes into, is it okay if I have that computer? So all that stuff is done in the morning when I walk out there. And a typical day for Styx is load in at 10 a.m. We line check at 3, sound check at 4:15, doors at 7:30, show at 8:30, something like that. So I don't have a whole lot of time to get this done. So loading begins. I'm going to set up consoles and racks. I'm going to run the snake. If I'm waiting on power, I'm laying out my analyzer mics. You got to use your time wisely. I have 5 mics in total. 1 through 4 are on axis with the PA, and the 5th mic is at front of house, and that also serves as my SPL mic because, once again, consistency, SPL is part of that, gain structuring. All mics are gain matched using recallable preamps. I have a Roland Octapre in there. So at the start of it, or once a year, essentially, just to make sure everything's still within reason, put all your microphones in one location. Put pink noise through a speaker, either a near field monitor or the PA, and try to match their overall tendencies gain wise, which you can see on Smart. You can, if it's up, it's louder. If it's down, it's quieter. Try to match all those gains so that you can make accurate judgments of SPL between zones, between microphones. If you don't have $8,000 sensitivity match set. So after I get power, I'm gonna load my file, get ready for virtual playback and peak noise. So making peak noise and applying my trade, essentially, is an old term. Is the zoning correct? Is left, is right? Is sub? Is it stereo subs? Is it patched right? Because now's the time to figure that out. Just, am I hearing noise come from the zones that I want? Does it sound the same? Okay.
Hey, Cookie, I'm curious. Do you go through a zone when you check left, right? I remember being there with Pooch and Ted Leamy, with a PA going, okay, top, left, right, top, right, left, right, both together, and then the next circuit, and then the next circuit, and then so he would go, from the beginning, each circuit, left and right, and both together, and then the whole thing.
I do, and I'll show that to you in a second. But what I do is just very, very broad strokes, just to hear if the PA is right, because I've run into PAs where maybe the main PA is broken into 2 zones essentially. Horns are messed up on the bottom zone of left. Horns are messed up on the top zone of right. At that point, okay, how much time do I have? People skills. What was the read on the audio tech? Are they cool? Are they over it? How much can I ask them to do during this day without them just completely giving up on me? Because I'm going to need them later. At some point, it's inevitable. Listen to it first, and then see how far you got.
Especially when you're showing up to a foreign PA, right? Like I definitely, when I'm my own system engineer, the first thing that I do is exactly what Raul said: go through the zones, listen to left to right, try to figure out if all the components are working. Because oftentimes you're showing up to a casino, for instance, where, last night they had, some big metal show that blew up all the drivers,
Yeah.
And maybe even the house guy doesn't know that they're screwed up.
Doesn't know, he hasn't had time. The casino, the venue doesn't have budget to bring him in or her to listen and tech the PA. But also in a situation where you don't have zone control, maybe, it's one zone for everything. Can I get to the amplifiers? And we're not set up for that. Okay, well, it's very coarse at that point. So that is microphone on center, PA left, trace, PA right, trace. Aha! From
something
2K
weird
up,
going on here.
Something weird. From 2K up, it's 3K, and I hear it. Even though and your ears may be just exhausted after 4 shows in a row. Sure. Use the data in front of you. It's the same mic on center. Listen to the 2 sides. And you can start going from there. So here's that line. If I have access to system controller, unmute and mute each section to verify cabling is correct phase, no missing drivers, etc. And I'll get back to that in a minute after I go through all this routine. So what I do tune a PA, I've just developed the habit of just tuning off of PA right. And maybe that's because that's where monitor world is. So audio puts priority on that. that PA needs to go up so monitors can roll in, so stage can do their thing. So that's usually the PA that's in the air first of all on tour, and I've just continued on that through all that stuff. So
plus monitor guys love it when you use that side.
Exactly. Exactly.
Kidding. Love you, monitor guys.
That's an inside joke, Kai. I know exactly where you're going with that one. So to main PA, right, and a lot of what I look at is right away is HF shading, which I'll jump to here in a second with a visual. Check level and response of flown or stacked right subs, or house right section of arc. So even when I have, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but this is just how I've been doing it. If I have a center sub arc, I will only use and time align the house right side of that arc if I can mute it. Because I've noticed on my smart mics, because I'm doing everything on axis, and I'm trying to align all that information on axis, because at that point, is this a visual I can do on camera? I don't know about this. The PA is in time through most of the plane. If you do anything horizontal like this, then all you can do is really move it up and down. So I'm trying to line everything on axis, because then it tends to be in time, more places in the venue than not. So I'll use the main PA right. I'll use the flown right subs, line all that stuff. I'll use the house right side of the sub arc or ground subs, whatever is in there, and I try to match the phase on all that stuff on axis. That's just how I've done it, and you have to choose one way. You can never really get a perfect sub coverage. All you can do is really move the problem. That's really all it comes down to. So choose what works for you. What I end up doing is setting the target curve to match the level of the subs, because it's easier to turn the full range boxes down than it is to turn subs up. Subs tend to be at 0 anyway, and you're going to run into that, especially with my curve with that pretty big low end bump. So there's some things I'm just talking about now, but I'll show visually. Timeline the subs and the mains. Verify PA right and PA subs match target curve. Right? Are you done yet? So then I'm done with the subs. I'm done with the main PA. I'll move that mic 1, which is my brown mic. I move that to the convergence point between the bottom of the PA and the front fills. Where is an audience member going to hear both zones at the same time? And I'll put that microphone there. I'll try to match my target curve on my front fills as well, because that's how the mix is set up. So if that's how I'm making my judgments on throws and balances between guitars and vocals, with that tonal balance, I want that to translate down front as well. So front fills, if you take like an 8-inch box, like 8-inch line array box, and drop it on the front of the stage, it's probably going to have a preset loaded into it that's for being in the air and being 50 feet away from a person. So it's going to have a pretty big HF bump on it. A lot of times with the front fills, I'm just shoving that down. I'm trying to get it to at least be flat and then start to slope down a little bit so that people are right up in front of it. It sounds warm and it doesn't hurt them. They still hear the vocals, the guitars, all the presence that's there, but it doesn't hurt. Delay fills back to the PA. It's okay to have them about 2 milliseconds ahead, because we're talking about Haas effect, because your ear will, as long as the delay is within or less than 40 milliseconds, your ear hears it as one source. As soon as it gets to be more than 40 milliseconds, then it's a delay. So your ear is brought to the first arrival. Everything else is a reflection. So you have to think about the people down front. The band is right in front of them. They don't want them to hear the PA, which is kind of up and to their right or up and to the left. You want to bring their focus down to the stage. So I tend to have those front fills be just a little bit ahead in time from the main PA. Side hangs.
That's a great point, Cookie, and it's a lot of guys don't do that. It's where the focus, where it pulls you looking. I've sat in a lot of places where a good system engineer, sets stuff up, sitting in the first few rows, and everything is perceived as coming like way over here. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, the band's right here.
Yeah, it's a psychoacoustics,
it's
I guess.
An important thing.
Yeah, and man, those front few rows are the hardest things to really do well. And add on top of that they are the most expensive seats. And
I know,
typically,
you better get it right.
Yeah, better get it right. That's where the guests are. The band guests tend to be, unless they're really interested. I shouldn't say really interested in audio, but more, I guess, in the know. We'll kind of sit back and kind of get a nice stereo image, all that. But especially if they're in the industry, they'll tend to sit back and get everything taken in at once. So side hangs, delay zones, check delay back to FOH mic, and delay my recording bus. So typically, we're 100 feet out from the main PA, so your delay time to your SPL mic is going to be 100 milliseconds, 101 milliseconds. And what I actually do is I send, because it's Digico, you can send a group to a group. I have the main bus sending to a delay to a recording group, and then my front of house VP88 also gets sent to that delay group. But what I do is I delay my main left right back to where my VP88 is, which is right where that SPL mic is. So Smart tells me what my latency to the PA is. Boom, there it is. So in one move, I can actually print, the board mix with audience mics without even having to think about it. Just take the
Let's
measurement.
be clear, you're not delaying your master bus, you're delaying the record bus back to
Correct.
the VP88.
Yeah. I'm bringing it back in. Yeah, because it's the record bus goes to a matrix. The VP88 goes to a matrix. Yeah. So the thing that I have to move back is that. And that's something I learned, when we were working together, doing all that stuff. Calibrate FOH SPL if not already. It is important. Think about jumping on the interstate in a car without a speedometer, unless you have an unlimited budget for your speeding tickets. You got to know where you are. And the other thing to consider is doing this consistently day to day, your ears get tired. So, third show in, it doesn't really feel that loud. You look at your SPL meter. No, I'm 3 dB hotter than I normally would be. Let's get it back. We may be beaten up. The audience isn't beaten up. And I'm sure when we all go back to work, those first few shows are going to be like, oh my God, this is loud.
Turn that down.
Turn it down. And then we're going to adjust to it and continue on like we normally do. So PA is tuned, and I'm ready to start the back section of what I'm doing. So I use the playback, no vocals to verify system gain. And I usually set the PA to 98 dBA with no vocals. My shows tend to run around 100 dBA. It's classic rock. It doesn't have to be that loud, I don't have a lot of screaming teenagers. I don't have to deal with any of that. Check the validity of any filters using overall PA. Are they worth it? This goes back to our discussion there. A whole bunch of filters. Is it worth it? No, it's not worth it. Kick it out. It's better just to leave it go and not introduce any phase problems. Walk the zones. Get a feel for the PA performing in the room and make any adjustments if necessary. And I find that with my smart calculations, and by the way, on my front fills, I'm also matching SPL because I take a trace of the PA. I see how loud it is at that microphone. I see the front fills. Okay, well, front fills have to come down and level, and they have to shade down a little bit. So when I walk down there, it's just verifying what I should already know. But walk to the top, get a feel for up there. Hey, it's really bassy up here. Is there anything I can do about it? Yes, no, maybe. But you have to know how it feels in the room if you don't have a system engineer. That's the thing. It's up to you to kind of get an idea. And this comes back to maybe your mix position is really heavy on the sub information. Maybe it's a theater with a curve. But if you thin it out, it's going to be way too thin for everybody else. So just get a feel for what the room is doing.
Yeah, and also you brought up a really good point, which is mix to your audience, and your system engineer should help you to do that. Your audience, appreciates you mixing at 100 dBA weighted, whereas my audience with Travis Scott wanted 132 dB C weighted sub information. That's what they wanted. They're 15 years old. They want to have it hit their chest. And so, when you're both guys, the system engineer and the mixer, that's something that you think about is mixing to your audience.
Definitely. And I'm fortunate enough that the audience for the band that I'm mixing is baby boomers. They're a little bit older than I am, so maybe the hearing's a little darker than mine, so I can kind of get away with things. Because my hearing after doing several shows in a row kind of equals theirs, from every thing. So I've thought about that, and I'm realizing it's kind of it helps me fit in a little bit better with mixing to an older crowd, especially with our ear fatigue that comes with all that. So now here's something that we were talking about a while ago. So along with knowing your mix and headphones in ear fields and all that stuff, I know Pooch and I know what our walking music sounds like. and we know how loud it should be. So I've really gone to the point where walking music, I set it at 75 dBA. And this is all coming down to system gain. So maybe I grab my my Dolby Lake and I pull the main PA down 9 dB. 9 dB is pretty common. And that's something that I learned from working with Pooch. He would say, pull the whole PA back 8 dB. Just because then his console sits where it is, his gain structure is right, but it's not too loud. We're not hitting limiters. It all fits in. It's okay to yank the PA back. It's okay to do that. And then I also know that my intro roll should be 93 dBA, and there's more listening if I'm still not satisfied. But typically that should be good to go. Mute the PA and thank the house tech. You gotta thank them. Let them know them know the schedule. I won't be doing anything with the PA until line check at 3 p.m. and sound check at 4 p.m. 4:15. That lets them know that they can walk away. You need that person on your side. If something goes down, I know there's a system engineer who's watching this. I had an issue. I needed his help during the show, and he was right there. What do you need? I need a quad box. I need, the power went out. Okay, no problem. It helped, And I only met him the day before, but he was professional, and we had a good relationship there. So after that, let the lighting director know that I'm done with the noise, so she can focus. She may have a person having to climb. Wire the drums. Now it's time for lunch. Virtual playback on headphones.
Lunch.
I know, at 2:30 p.m.
You get lunch.
Virtual playback on headphones or neophyroids. Just if I need to do something, but not get in the way of the other departments. Sound check. Verify PA gain is correct while they're playing, and during sound check, get a feel for those throws. Like we were talking about before. Are there any weird aspects of the PA while the band is playing? So I've already walked around. I've already gotten a feel for the PA. So this is my practice time with that PA in that room when the band is playing. I'm not trying to fix a mix or anything like that. I'm just getting a feel for it, just like the band is getting a feel for it on stage. Walk away and protect your ears. And that's pretty much the routine. And then it's showtime and all that stuff.
One other thing I want to throw in here that I know that you do consciously or maybe unconsciously, but it's something that I definitely do, is early on in the day, like before any speakers have even been flown, I'm walking around the room and checking out acoustically, like what's happening in the room. So
Absolutely.
Like when someone drops a bunch of shackles or, a deck chain or whatever, what happens acoustically in that room? And that'll give you some real telltale signs before you even get into all that stuff that you started talking about. Like I know when I walk into an arena and somebody drops a deck chain and it's, 5 seconds of reverb afterward, I go, okay, this is what we're up against today.
Which is a great point, and I wanted to point out two quick things. The Cookie that you were bringing up. Your process right there was for a one-off when you are maybe the only band. Obviously, you and I have run to each other into multiple festivals where maybe I am the system engineer for the festival, and so my job is not to make sure that if you made any changes to the PA, that when you come back as a headliner 4 bands later, everything is exactly where you left it. And so that I think there's an additional step of communication there where, when you walk away, you did all your tuning, you have your stuff on your leg, but there is also some system changes that got executed that have to come back. And so I think that's also a good point to a lot of the listening system engineers that are looking after festivals, where you might make changes to accommodate, because we have the technology nowadays to make all these changes. You just have to remember that you have to remember how to put it back the way you have
save, recall, absolutely.
Because the last thing you want to have is
skill.
Yeah.
That's a people skill to recognize whether or not you trust the guy enough to do that, right? So one of the things that we would always do, Cookie and I, in a festival situation, is spend enough time, people skill wise, with the guy to truly get an understanding of whether or not we're going to trust him that he's going to do the things. Because it's 2 different ways of working. If you figure early on in the day that you don't trust the dude, then you're going to do more stuff in your end of it to try to fix stuff than you are letting him do it. There's kind of a playoff there, right, Cookie?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. What's more efficient are their filters better? Does their manufacturer have FIR filters in there? So, okay, I would really like to use the FIR filters, but to do that, I'll need to ask them to change it. If I can't get it myself, if I can't touch the computer itself, and in a festival you're not, and maybe sometimes if you know the SE, if you've seen them several times, but if you're going to make a change, save their file as it is, save your file as a new file, and make a mental note, and also remember what changes you're doing from their original one, so that maybe they get sick, maybe they get food poisoning, maybe they're tired and they forget. It's okay to say, hey, did you load that file back? Oh, yeah, thanks for reminding me, because it's 10 o'clock at night after they've been beaten.
Yeah,
been beaten up for
the last thing you want to hear when you ask, hey, is everything back where I left it? And they go, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's the wrong answer. That's really messes with your head. So obviously this whole profile, this whole process, this routine gets you to be efficient, because if you're repetitive, you're consistent, you can be fast because you have a list to follow. And obviously consistent, that your target curve, your PA is going to be contoured every night. So now you know that your mix is going to translate every night. So ultimately what you're trying to do is keep your mix in the pocket every night, regardless of what PA you're dealing with. So that gets you there.
If the PA is in the pocket, you can have a more intricate mix. You can hit more cues. You have more time on the art side of it. If you're wrestling with the PA, some people have bands that mix themselves. The particular band that I'm with, they do, but it's so much better if I move things in and out with them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If your PA is in line, you can get much more intricate with your mix.
You can be creative. I think we talked about the other day,
which is what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. So, moving on here. Let's see. Next slide. So, I think that this goes back to the fact that the list of skills that the SE need to have, it's pretty long, So I think that these ties directly to that, brings you back home with this, because, some people says, I just want to mix, but, to get to that mix part, to get creative part, you got to have this knowledge. So I'd like you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the control software, knowing, we had a discussion before, I think last week when we were talking about stuff, and Pooch, I brought up, it helps for the mix engineer to know the terminology in the software. And you said, wait, as long as I can say, hey, that area between the bass guitar and the kick drum, I'm having issues with that, that's where it is. I thought about that some more, but I remember when we were working together, I'd always say, hey, on this PA, that whole haystack thing is called zoom, and you would remember zoom, got it. So you would say, hey,
oh yeah, dude, I learned just as much from you on a daily basis about PA stuff, where we could communicate better, I am that mixer that kind of is not interested in being a system engineer. I know that you enjoy both sides of the coin here, and you enjoy being both of those guys and being both of those guys at the same time. Whereas I am way more like a mixer, kind of don't really want to know. I don't want to know about that shit. Make it happen. And so, but that comes in exactly what you're talking about with people skills, and communication. Yeah. And I do know, because of you and because of working with other guys, the terminology so that I can communicate better.
Yeah, I always say, being an SE, you're creative for about 30 minutes a day, and then it's just, whack-a-mole after that. And as a mixer, you're able to be creative all day. So being able to wear those two hats, I get the technical side out of it. I scratch that itch. I get some creativity there. Like, how the hell am I going to make this PA work today? And kind of go through it. But then you get the mix side where it's art. It really is, and that's really fulfilling to me.
Excellent. Yeah. So what about this whole thing of I just want to mix? I think this is a very important thing. I think it goes back to Pooch's Van Halen concert. PA evolved, but you just want to mix. But so talk about the importance nowadays of ticket prices, confidence, marketability.
Think about a family that's rolling up with their kids, to see a show. So 4 tickets, 3 tickets, 5 tickets, whatever. They've already paid $100 probably for those. It's $500 in tickets. They have to take the time to get there. Maybe they leave their kids at home. They have to pay for childcare. They have to pay for parking. All this stuff. A family's rolling in. They're upwards of $1,000 just to see a show. So it's up to us to make sure that they want to come back and see the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've always been asked the question with today's technology, should there we should be able to ensure that at least every seat in the house has a decent audio response. At least, you might not be able to get everybody exactly the same, but at least intelligibility, some coherence. If you are in the coverage zone of the PA, because sometimes God knows that they do sell seats past the coverage, even though we tell them otherwise. With today's technology, we should be able to help assure your production manager, your promoter, that look, people here, you're not going to get people asking for their money back because the coverage isn't there or the frequency response is not right or whatnot.
I've taken a lot of flack, on tours from production managers and things like that, where we're on tour with the PA. We're paying for the PA. It's in the truck, and we come into a venue. Oh, they already have a PA. Why don't you just use that? But I know it's not as good as what we're doing. It's not going to give us the results that we could get with our PA. I fight that fight for the audience. Is it easier on my day if we use the in-house PA? Yeah, sure it is. I mean, for the SE, it's a little bit more to try to maybe wrestle it in there. But for the fly guys, they can kind of take a break and all that stuff. But it's for the audience. That's the thing. You want to have a good product for the audience, so the audience comes back again, repeat shows. You're representing the band, and the more money they make, the more money you make, and all that.
There's no excuse for a bad sounding show, in my opinion. Now, we have the technology to fix it all, and if there's a part of the building that sounds bad, often it's a human problem. It's somebody that's not doing it right. And just like Cookie said, I defend and fight to the death about coverage. And when a production manager won't allow me to hang a side hang because he doesn't want to deal with it that day or whatever, and then the Live Nation rep comes in and says, well, we're going to sell to here. And I go, well, that ain't covered. And so, no, you're not. We get into arguments about it.
Yeah. You have to be willing to fight the fight. And sometimes it gets ugly.
Again, it's like communication goes both ways. Not only do you have to talk to your crew and your technicians, but also to management and say, look, and if you want to open those seats, if you want to add that front row, if you want to add that other third audience to the left, these are the downside to that. This is what you're, walking into. Give me another PA, additional PA. Cookie, you and I talked about this the other night, which is, the confidence and marketability factor. The more you do this process, the more your consistency grows, the more your mix solidifies. You are delivering a solid mix, a consistent mix every night. That develops confidence, which makes you more marketable. So I'd like for you, have you seen that in your own approach over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I started out as a lot of us do, as stage patch kids, just learning. And I happened to sit behind a monitor engineer, Rob Nevalainen, actually mixing Styx 20 something years ago. Learned a lot from him, and I learned people skills, which I didn't realize it at the time, but I learned how to talk to artists. But starting out as stage patch and then moving into monitors for a lot of years, and then I saw all the technology happening out at front of house, and I thought, well, I'm kind of stuck with this. Don't get me wrong, awesome ATI Paragon console and ear monitors that they were the technology kind of fell flat for a couple of years. All that technology was advancing out there, and I thought I need to do something just to spark my mind. So I went out to front of house. So I've already had the mixing experience. I've already developed ear training and all that stuff. Now it was learning the technology out there, and also knowing what a front of house mix sounds like, as opposed to, because my ears were developed for wedges and for ear monitors. You walk out to front of house, and my first thought is, oh my God, it's so bright. A lot of HF, which back in those days you didn't have the ability to replicate in ear monitors. It was all nasty distortion. So moving there, and that means when I listen as a system engineer, I'm also listening as a monitor engineer. And when I become a front of house engineer, I have all three experience levels working in my brain at the same time. Maybe I don't realize it, but pardon me. I'm also the guy who will walk up on stage and listen to how the sub arc is doing on stage, because I know what it's like to be standing behind a PA. Right. When you arc subs, you're focusing whatever energy is behind it at a central point, typically where the lead singer is positioned. So you need to understand, if the monitor engineer says, hey, the band is getting killed up here, you need to know where on the stage. I shouldn't say you need to know. It helps to know which band member it is, what you can do about it, and why it's bad. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of PAs that, as monitor engineers have had to stand behind, where it's
but the cool thing about it is that if you have a process, you have a vetted process that you just showed us, you follow your process every day. Don't skip the step today. Go through all your steps every day, regardless of what the PA is. You're going to discover those issues, whether you have a left-right sub or whether you have a straight line subwoofer array, because you're following your steps, and you kind of every night you feel confident that you go, okay, I did all my check. I'll check all those things. I discover all these problems. I fix all these problems. I can now feel comfortable that my mix, is going to translate well. My client management or whoever comes to front of house to visit that night, it's going to feel like, oh yeah, that show sounded really good. And you have been consistently delivering a good show. And a lot of it goes back to the fact that you wrestle the PA, at the beginning of the day to deliver your mix, as opposed to, I'll just wing it and I'll just twist the knobs on the fly. That probably will lead you to a different kind of result in your career, So
yes,
yeah, and we've all been there. Sometimes we have to do that, but let's try to not do that if we have the chance and the access to the tools. So let's see. So, a couple of messages here before we get into the Q&A. Obviously, not a lot of videos are there about systems engineering training. So the first thing I think, Cookie, you have mentioned this ad nauseum tonight, which is you need to be versatile. You need to be knowledgeable on all of the different systems that are out there. So I would say to people, take the time right now, not only to participate on our seminars, but on any other seminars, that are out there. That are to get to know the software platforms that controls the amplifiers, all the different, line array calculator software programs, all the different three-dimensional modeling things, so that you can converse, that you can actually understand when you walk into these systems, what you're getting into. I think it's a very important thing. Number two, you need to feel comfortable, I think, with the system optimization software. Do you have to go take a smart training class? If you can, take it online. If you haven't gone to one, I mean, Jamie is a great guy. Those guys are great. If you use Systune, call Bruce Olson, both great platforms, or get SIM certified. All of those things are important so you have all the basic understanding of transfer function analysis. That really should go tied with critical listening. That's equally important, not just looking at a squiggly line, but understanding how that relates to the mix that is going through it at the point in time. I like Cookie's line of get your hands on everything, right, Cookie? Just kind of go and get your hands on every piece of gear you can, try every different piece of equipment you can. You should even consider, if you're working at a shop, I think we lost Cookie there. Hopefully he'll come back.
He's gone.
He's gone. I know.
Right. He'll be back.
He'll be back. It's the concept of coming up with presets. He wanted, if you had the chance to work at a shop, or even if you're at home with your home stereo, just take, have an equalizer, take a smart, system home with you, and just kind of measure things at home, figure out, how the lows and the mids and the highs kind of relate to each other when you look at phase response and so forth. It was important
if you're not taking this time that we have right now, you're doing it wrong. I mean, we all of a sudden we have all of this time, and I am trying to, gain knowledge and skill set about things that I didn't know about, on a daily basis, because we have this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this of asking questions of the festival system engineers. I mean, I think that's very important. I think that before we go in and start making all kinds of changes, both it's a respect thing, right? But also it imparts, it's a good way to start the day, just to kind of take into consideration, their input. They have already spent some time adjusting the system. They have been living with the system for the last couple of, days, maybe. So I think it's a great way to start to say, hey, how is the system? What have you had to modify? Can you show me what you have done, et cetera, et cetera? And then, of course, experiment and do, not in the middle of the show, but definitely, have an empirical knowledge of, oh, I tried that technique. That didn't really work for me, so I put it back or whatever else. So stuff to think about. Well, not sure where Cookie went, so let's look at some questions here. Let's see.
Technology crash, I'm sure.
Right. Last week was me. This week is him. Maybe he'll come back. Let's see. Okay. So let's see. We have a question here for you, Pooch, which have nothing to do with system engineering, but it's a good question. Pooch, have you used timecode on the Arena console before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were talking about it before we started this, but I don't use it with Iron Maiden because there's no playback at all. But any band that has any sort of playback, I ask for the time code coming from the playback to utilize snapshot control, because it'll be the same snapshot exactly in time every single day. So the two artists that I did before Iron Maiden, which were Jay-Z and Travis Scott, I absolutely was using time code.
Aha!
It looks like he's coming back.
I think he's coming back. He was good. Did you go to the
There he
cookie?
is.
Did you go to the cookie jar?
I had to go get the cookie. Yeah, I was a little bit famished. Had to dig into the cookie jar. Had to please the internet gods.
Well, we're doing a couple
crash
of.
and burn? Was that a
yeah.
technology crash and burn?
I've got a 7th grader here in the house, and I'm not sure if he was crushing the internet or not. But
there you go, sucking the bandwidth, huh?
Yeah, I had to go
get off TikTok.
Love it.
All right, so let's see. Vishal had a question here that says, in the same way that the studio mixing engineer knows when to stop mixing, when or at what point do system engineers consider to stop tuning? When it's enough? I think
First of all,
once
mix
you go
engineers
through,
never. First of all, mix engineers never know when to stop. So
right, when the budget runs out,
Right.
But for system engineers, I figure that if you go through your list, that's a pretty good your checklist. If you don't have a checklist, how do you know where you are?
That's exactly it. You try to. The name of the game is being fast and being efficient, because you got to get in there. You got to get out of the way, because there's other departments that have to do their thing, and the show is going to happen that day.
Yeah, with or without you.
With or without you. So it's develop your routine and stick to it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up forgetting a zone, and then you got to try to work backwards, and then.
Yeah. Good question from Win Johnson. As a system engineer, how do you work with the front of house mixer to determine the flatness or spectral tilt of the system? In your case, talking to yourself, but yeah, how do you go about, am I flat? Am I this? How do you guys, and I think we kind of went through that. I think that's depends on the style of music, depends on the style of PA. I think the question is once you figure out what that spectral tilt is supposed to be, then try to reproduce it every night so that you're consistent, whatever that is.
That's an early on discussion. That's way soon in it. Like even before the first production rehearsal, that's a discussion I'll have with the system engineer where, hey, listen, I really like it linear all the way out from 250 to, all the way out. I like all those sparkly bits.
Right.
So whatever that means to you to achieve that for me, that discussion I think happens really early on.
And also maybe because what you're looking for, if you have an engineer that maybe doesn't know what they're looking for, but the SE can say, what are your favorite PAs? And if you're familiar with those PAs and their tendencies, you kind of read their mind.
Let's get an idea.
But ultimately, the first day, if you're carrying a PA, put it out there, just let it go. Don't put a whole lot of filters in it. How does that sound to you? And what about this? What about this? That I like. Okay. Then that gives you a general idea of what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think to me, the most important thing is that I'm tuning the PA for this artist. I'm not tuning the PA for me listening to my brothers in arms. It's got to be for these artists to paint, their painting. So I have to you have to get out of that mindset of like, it's got to be right for that person that's going to mix. Unless you are that person.
Unless you are that person. And if you're the SE at a festival and you tune the PA, don't be offended when somebody says, oh, I got to do all this. And it may be a lot to it. When I was younger, I would kind of took it personally, and I'd kind of be offended. But then I was that guy coming through with Pooch going, nope, do this to it.
And not only that, but we've also seen it, and you've seen it too, where, you might come and do 2 filters. The person, in front of you did 7. And then, that's fine for that band, and this is fine for your band. So it's like, it's different. You have to put it in context, right? So
you don't know what that mix engineer is up against either, by the way.
Sure.
For instance, Iron Maiden, great band, but they hate sub information. In fact, when they talk about sub information, they're really talking about 100 hertz and above. Like when they say to you, "Oh, it's too much sub," they don't even know that there's information below 100 hertz.
Sure.
So when I show up at a festival and I say to the dude, "Okay, we're gonna have to do something about that information," that guy shouldn't be upset that I'm saying that we need to fix that, because for Disturbed, I'm sure that kick drum sounds great with that 40 hertz in it. But for Iron Maiden, that's not going to work. So,
know your artist. Next question. I'd like to know about you. Which systems do you prefer to work with? Line array passives and actives? Which one have a better quality and better dynamics? So I guess, we could just talk about what are your top, 3, 4, 5 PAs. I know Pooch, you're touring with Claire Cohesion. You've toured with VTX before. You've toured with Meyer before. You've toured with Dell Acoustics before. Adamson, of course.
Yeah, I mean, those are the top 5, and depending on the artist, they change in order for me. But, people have heard me say this before. If you're talking about the top 5 line arrays, we're really talking about ice cream. And you might like chocolate and I might like vanilla, but it's still ice cream. So
right. It's going to be cold. Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be cold. It's going to be sweet, and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just what's your preference?
More often than not, I think many times, and I don't know how you feel about this, Cookie, but it's better to have a really good system engineer and a, okay PA than having a super PA with a really bad system engineer. Because it's like it really could hurt your night if you have somebody who doesn't know anything about the PA, or the PA is deployed the wrong way, or just doesn't know the software. So it's important that you get a system, but also get a system engineer that actually knows the in and out of that particular system.
Absolutely.
So, and for you, Cookie, what have you been specifying, since you're not carrying PA usually?
I just had to pull up my spec sheet over here. Number 1 on the list is VTX V25 with S28 subs. For classic rock, the G28s, that's awesome for EDM with all that 25 hertz in there.
Yeah.
But anything below 40, it just sounds tubby on those kick drums, and it's just not stylistic.
Yeah.
4889s, I prefer, in my spec, I say prefer PAs based on 15-inch speakers. That's just for the classic rock, that kind of gives me that area that I like. And then, not because it's Harman on this, but it is 3 JBL PAs in a row. It's V25, 4889s, and A12s. A12s are super clean, but it's okay because these days we can add our distortion back in, and if our ears get tired, we can take it back out.
Yeah,
it's nice.
And you're running into those, and of course you're still running into some VDOS and some other Adamson rigs out there, I assume.
Yeah.
So, fantastic.
Has your list changed as you have become a mixer? In the sense of before you were just a system engineer, and now you're an excellent mixer. And by the way, people, if you haven't gone and seen Styx, you need to. It sounds amazing.
They're a great band, man.
Awesome.
I know, but I mean, dude, you're killing it out there.
These are all the songs that we don't know that we know.
Yes, exactly. But has that changed for you? Like, were you I know that back in the day, you kind of liked K1 better than I did. Was that higher up on your list than?
No, well, K1 comes after those 3 JBLs. It's changed a little bit. Yeah, as an SE, you tend to like PAs that can get you quickly to the result that you're looking for. As an SE, how is it controlled? Do I have to go to 3 different processors to get one thing done? And LA Manager years ago really stepped that up, and it was really, really quick and easy to use. It wasn't convoluted. Performance Manager has gotten there, and there's a lot of parallels between those 2 platforms. So it's because you have to think in the technical side and the art side. It's you have to think in both ways. What is the cleanest way to get where I want to go? What gives me what I need?
Again, back to knowledge. Yeah. Knowledge is power. Next question. Do you tune your near fields to the same target curve as the PA, or do you leave them unEQ'd?
Pooch, you want to do that?
I'm like, Cookie, you want to do that?
Okay.
No, I mean, for me lately, I have been using the smaller version of whatever the box is as my near fields in rehearsals. So for instance, with Cohesion, there's Co12, but there's also a 6-inch model that has the same signature as the bigger box. And so like in rehearsals, I used to use Genelex or whatever, some, near field monitor that I was familiar with as a studio guy. But now I tend to use the small box of whatever the PA that I'm using. How about you?
I'm actually using 708Ps, and I absolutely love them.
Oh, well.
I am not EQing them to respond to the PA.
Yeah.
I think that's a switch in your head where you understand that you're listening to near fields, and then you listen to the big PA with impact. I think it's just in your brain. But I'm also not listening to those at the same level as the PA. So
Yep.
I want to hear details. I want to hear placement of all these things. I want to hear if there's any phase issues, which try to eliminate all the parameters. The room is going to introduce reflections to you. So no, do not EQ them.
I think ultimately, near field should be a speaker that you trust and that that your mix is going to be, sounding great.
Right.
It's something that you should know over the years. And for me, that has changed a little bit, where now I kind of want the signature of whatever it is, the box that I'm using in my near fields.
There's been times where I've been in unfavorable mixing positions where, because I'm going through my routine, I know what the SPL is. I am mixing off of my monitors. I get the benefit of the subs, that are 100 feet away from me in the room. But if I can't hear imaging, and in a situation where you have multiple vocalists and multiple guitars, and you can't hear imaging when you're off the side in a theater or something like that, and headphones work, you get to know the sound of your mix through headphones. But reverbs are different, when it's left and right like this, as opposed to in front of you and all that stuff. So. Yeah, and the 708Ps actually can keep up. If I really wanted to weld myself with them, I could. They can keep up with the PA.
Excellent. All right, guys, we're approaching the 2-hour mark. I'm going to put up your contact information. I know we have a few more questions, so I'm going to ask people to contact us directly. If I can master this screen, here we go. I hope everybody can see that. And Laura is back here to take us on. But I don't know, Pooch and Cookie, if you had any final closing words. I know some people would like to do a second session on the topic. There's a lot of interest in system engineering, probably because not enough training is available online. So we'll definitely look into that. But here is information for Cookie and for Pooch. And of course, I can be contacted as always at raul.gonzalez@harman.com. Any thoughts, Cookie and Pooch, before we sign away?
Do you want to show the leapfrogging of muting the zones real quick?
Sure. You wanna switch that?
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
Let's see if I can stop sharing here. Okay. Hang on, Laura.
I've had to restart, so I'm not sure if the proper camera is going to come up, but we'll see it here.
Okay.
I just want to.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pooch.
I just want to say that I think we need more people in this industry where their skill set is, I want to be a badass system engineer and not, I'm a system engineer now and then I want to be a mixer. There's a lot of guys out there that are awesome at this job and love what they do. I think we need more training for those kind of guys, because like you said, there's not a whole lot of stuff out there specific to system engineers.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with aspiring to becoming a front of house engineer. I'm saying, well, you're in that pocket of being a system engineer, really give it your all, develop your skills, because ultimately, like Cookie just showed, it's going to make you a better front of house mixer.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and think of all those passport stamps we got when we were working together with Lincoln Park. I mean, going to Indonesia and crazy places. So what I was going to talk about here with checking the PA and all that stuff. If I have control, I will actually do this. I'll leapfrog these zones, and that tells you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That tells you if there's a cabling issue, if there's a phase issue, and things like that. That's just something I wanted to illustrate.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can tell you're turning two zones at a time, so you know that there's summing, so you should, it should get louder. It
should get louder, and sometimes it gets way louder, which means the circuiting is wrong. Maybe they jump 3 boxes or 4 boxes instead of 2. Yeah. But just little things like that you can do to save your time later on in the day.
Details matter. Thank you both. It's really been a great honor, a great pleasure to have you both here. You're both good friends of the family. And, stay healthy, stay well. Same goes to everybody. And I will be chatting with you guys in the very near future. Laura, you want to take us home?
Sure. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. That was a great session. You had a ton of attendees and everybody kind of hung on till the end. So well worth our time. I wanted to comment on something that Pooch had said where, this is a great opportunity for everybody to utilize their free time that they might have and get additional training. And I wanted to mention that in the next 2 months, we have 11 audio sessions that are coming up, as well as 37 recorded sessions that you can find out on our playlist. So to get all that information, just go out to pro.harman.com. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.